And I'm going to jump in with Pip, which is a very important, maybe the most important insight into the Melville understanding of reality. So Pip starts out as just a normal, sensitive little boy, a sort of grown-up little boy, but I mean, I don't know how old Pip really is. What do you think, like 16 or something? It's hard to say. But the main thing is, he's just seems like a sensitive, intelligent person, but then he gets sort of jumps into another dimension when he's in the whaleboat. Once it gets hit by the whale and he jumps out of the boat and they have to cut the line in order to go back and get him, and everybody gets very annoyed at him. And then the next time the whale hits the boat, and they tell him they're never going to go find him again. If he jumps out of the boat another time, it's just too bad for him. And the whale hits the boat, and he jumps out of the boat, and it looks like he's going to just be left there to drown. And he does almost drown. But what happens to him is an experience of something much worse than drowning, if that's possible. I mean, a total experience of something that's horrible and worse than even just fearful that he gets into. And that is the loneliness of being left alone with nothing but the open ocean and the open sky all around. He's lost his connection with any particular place, with other people, with the Pequod, which was the center for his life. He's lost, and the way he's lost is and abandoned, and in this kind of horrible openness, is that on 333, Melville makes a nice move, which is on 333. So he jumps out of the boat, and they don't cut the line, and he turns his head toward the sun. That's where what I'm interested in. It's the bottom of 333. Pip turned his crisp, curling black head to the sun, another lonely castaway, though the loftiest and the brightest. So what's interesting about that is it's an example written into the way Melville describes Pip's experience of the way that you take up the situation from your perspective. And his perspective is that he's a lonely castaway, and he sees the sun as a lonely castaway. And it's the sun which, and I think there's this big thing going on in the background. I mean, the sun is the symbol of the good, of God, in Dante, and it's the center of everything in all these people's experience. And yet, and Pip is experiencing it from his perspective, but he's experiencing it as itself a lonely castaway, because he's reading his experience into his his experience of the sun from his perspective, and then treating it as if it's the sun's perspective, that it's also a lonely castaway. And that's just underlines something that we're going to go on for over and over for the rest of the lecture practically, that whoever we want to talk about, is always putting, and now I have to say it wrong so I can correct it and say it right, laying, I put it last time, laying their perspective on whatever is going on. So I misspoke. Last time I said it was the wrong thing. Now I can't even say the wrong thing when I want to. The wrong thing I said last time is that Melville thinks that it's very important that people are always giving an interpretation of their situation when they see anything or anybody and so forth. And there's something right about that. Just as Pip is interpreting the sun as a lonely castaway, that's sort of the extremist version. But when we get to the doubloon, all these various, what I call interpretations. Now I think interpretation is the wrong thing to say. If you have an interpretation, it seems to be something that there's several reasons it's the wrong thing to say, at least two important ones. One, it seems to be something you do. You're the powerful one. You give whatever interpretation you choose to things, and then that's how they show up for you. And maybe you can even get them to show up that way for other people if you write very well, or paint very well or something. But so interpreting is a positive activity. And it's interesting that Nietzsche, whom I mention every once in a while, who's the Balkington character, who's got this tremendous sense of his own identity and his own willpower to face up to the way the universe is. So now it looks like everybody's always interpreting, and that means able to willfully give any meaning they please, and that's just wrong. That's wrong phenomenology of people, I think, even though Nietzsche thinks that's right. It's certainly not what Ishmael thinks, or what Melville thinks. But something like that is right, except it's got to be put in a more receptive, passive way, not a kind of Superman performance of reading meanings into things. And what it is, I think, and this is Melville, I think, sees this, although I don't know if I can find exactly a passage where he says it. He better see it, because it would fit right, is that what's happened is everybody does have different perspectives on what's going on. But they don't just arbitrarily, willfully lay an interpretation or put an interpretation on what's going on. They are empty and open and drawn into a particular perspective or experience of what's going on. So that they're passive, not active. And therefore interpretation is a misleading term because it's something you do. You want to say that it's something like what I'm just saying, they're drawn to see things this way or that way. And that's, and Melville, I think, is constant with that, but keep your eyes open where you read. When I had this aha, Erica threw me into this saying interpretation is wrong. And when I saw that now that's right, she's right, it's wrong, then I started looking for what is it, and if not an interpretation. And then you get lots of descriptions, but I haven't found anyone yet that says sort of specifically that you're drawn into having a perspective. But there is a place, unfortunately, one place that I could find where Melville says it's an interpretation. I don't think he should. We'll get to that in a minute. Okay, now I'm going to go back to reading this, and wherever I used to say interpretation, I'm now going to say perspective. And that is, let me say the other half. I said two things. The one thing is you have a lot of activity in a Nietzsche interpretation way of looking at things. And the world hasn't got anything. It's in Nietzsche just chaos. You impose your interpretation on what is a general blur until indeterminate until you give it an interpretation. And one wants to know now, and that's what we're going to get to in a minute, well, what is it like if it's not a chaos? What is Ishmael thinking when he thinks that, one, it's not a chaos, and two, it's not an activity that we have? That was the first thing I said. Well, we see that when we get to the doubloon. Now I'm going to just have to get there by way of things in between. So Pip has this experience of being totally alone, like the sun, and he reads it into he's drawn into seeing the sun that way. It's hard to practice this business of receptivity, but I think you've got to believe that Pip has, Melville says, no identity. And I don't think he has any willpower either. So you've got to keep thinking of him as open, empty, drawn into whatever perspective or experience he's having. Now, maybe it would help get this idea right if you went back in your mind's clear to the Odyssey and the interesting way that Homer seems to think about Helen. She is, when the light of Aphrodite shines, then it isn't as if Helen then interprets the situation as erotic and or romantic or whatever. It's not like that at all. It's like Helen is just drawn into the situation that shows itself to her that way. And she's not free to interpret it in any old way. And she's not just reading it into the situation. There really is, Aphrodite is shining means there really is. The light shining over the whole situation is making it very attractive for her to run off with Paris. And what's interesting about Helen is she's open to whatever comes along. She'll do it. She'll throw herself into it. She'll take the risk. And it doesn't always work out all right. Didn't work out all right with Helen. Paris turned out to be a jerk. And she was stuck with him for 10 years. But it made life intense. And Melville has, I think, got this. But now you can keep your eyes open and see if you think he's got it. Here's what he says now. In 334, I want to change my mind about how to do this. I'm going to go right to the doubloon. I'm going to come back in a little while. You'll see why. To what Pip sees. But the doubloon is an example of all the different ways that something can show up for or draw somebody into seeing everything like that. So it's given the way I happen to have said it, I think I'm now going to go on following that. So, and what are you looking for when you read the doubloon passage? You're looking for, do these people impose an interpretation or respond to a possible perspective? And is the world just indefinite chaos, or does the world already have some kind of structure? So let's see. I think that Melville has been very clever and good and right about the way he's trying to show the relationship between the perceiving person and the object that's being perceived. So how does it work? Well, Ishmael, so Ahab's going to reward people who cite Moby Dick. And Ishmael describes it on 345, where he puts the doubloon up. Oh, I see. No, I didn't read my own writing, but I did. What I want to say is, what Ishmael then describes is the way the doubloon looks when it's odd, but he tries to describe it, or Ishmael describes it, because he's now writing from outside as not as a character who's standing in front of the doubloon interpreting it, but he's going to tell us sort of what's really all over this doubloon, and then you can see how different people in the book react to it. So here's what's on the doubloon at the bottom of 345. It's just a complete sort of overlay of interpretable stuff. On its rounder border, it bore the letters Republic de Ecuador, Quito. So this bright coin came from a country so and so and so and so, and then it had an equator. Well, I better read it all. So this bright coin came from a country planted in the middle of the world and beneath the great equator and named after it, and it had been cast midway up the Andes in the unwaning climb of that knows no autumn, and zoned in by those letters you saw the likeness of three Andes summits, so there are three mountains, from one a flame coming from them, a tower on another, on the third a crowing cock, while it's arching over all was a segment of the partition zodiac. You see how sort of over determined with meaning and interpretable stuff. The signs all marked with their usual Kabbalistics, that's mystical symbols, and the keystone sun entering the equinoctial point at Libra. Well, that's something like just an objective description from nowhere of the coin. But now in the book, each person goes up and looks at this, really what you could think of as a rainbow of perspectives. I mean, there's obviously a whole, just huge number of ways that you could interpret. The that coin. But interpret's not the right word anymore, I'm convinced. Numerous ways that you can be drawn to see it from that perspective. And they each do see it from their own perspective. So Ahab sees everything as referring to himself, and he sees himself as a fixed identity and a giver of meaning. He really does interpret in that sense. So here we are, Ahab at the top of 346 says, "There's something ever egotistical in mountaintops and towers and all other grand and lofty things. The three peaks, as proud as Lucifer, the firm tower, that's Ahab. The volcano, that's Ahab. The courageous, the undaunted, victorious fowl, that too is Ahab. All are Ahab, and this round gold is but the image of the rounder globe, which like a magician's glass to each and every man turns but mirror back at his own mysterious self." Well, that says that sort of the character of the person or the self of the person is drawn to see their way of being, their kind of life, what kind of person they are in the perspective they take. And Ahab takes the perspective of this center of the world, meaning giver to everything, and so forth. And Starbuck, well, we've already read about Starbuck, but I'll just remind you. Remember, he's the believing Christian who, and I already quoted this, but I'll quote it again now, the middle of 346. He's in the middle of the middle paragraph. He says, he looked a dark valley between three mighty heaven-abiding peaks that almost seem the Trinity in some faint earthly symbol. So in this veil of death, God girds us around, and so forth and so forth. If we've been, the dark veil shows some moldy soil, but if we lift our eyes, the bright sun meets our glance, and so forth. He's just going on in a Christian way. And then he says, "Yet, oh, the great sun is no fixture, and if at midnight we would fain snatch some sweet solace from him, we gaze for him in vain. This coin speaks wisely, mildly, truly, but sadly to me. I'll quit it lest truth shake me falsely." He doesn't want to risk losing his faith, and therefore he's drawn into this Christian interpretation. Again, interpretation, it's hard to keep it out of your vocabulary, but I swear you got to it because it's misleading. So what do we want to say? We want to say he sees this from a Christian perspective. That sounds like it's pretty much the same thing. And it could be the same thing if you hear it a different way. But if you think of interpretation as something active that somebody like Ahab is doing, then you will not want to say interpretation of these others, or maybe even Ahab. But you want to say they're drawn to see the world from a certain perspective, and that's tied up with their identity, who they are, which comes from their character, presumably. Aha, a hand over there, yeah.
Kind of a different kind of drawing into something that was a number. I mean, it's not like God's there drawing you into.
It's like Homer. Let's think about this. You're saying it's not like Homer. So I'm saying, well, let's try it. Aphrodite shines, and thereby Helen sees this as a situation for seduction, say. And it seems to me that that's what's going on in each of these cases. But I see there that for Homer, it's clear that it's a god shining. It's Aphrodite who's making the situation show up that way. Whereas in Melville, it's just, and in Nietzsche, just for the other extreme, it's the viewer that's making the situation show up that way. Us as viewer and meaning giver gotten in the place of God after 2,000 years from Homer. But I think this is more like Homer. You never hear that these people, so to speak, actively interpret it. They just immediately see it a certain way. But now I've just said what I said again, and I don't understand what your objection is, so you say it again.
Okay, so if you look at something like everyday something like an erotic food, that's something outside of heaven. Whereas what you're saying here is that they're drawn into seeing something within their own identity. So, I mean, aren't they still essentially seeing something within themselves rather than some kind of exterior?
Well, no, they're not seeing something within themselves. I think, let's see if this helps, that this is a kind of rich reality view. The coin is like reality. It's got so much meaning, significance, objects, relations on it, and you can't sort of see it as a trinity and the three powerful peaks of a super person like Ahab sees it. Contradicts the way Starbucks sees it. And so what do you do with that? Well, I think what Melville thinks is reality is rich like the doubloon. It's really got, you can see, it can really look to you Christian, or it can look to you, I don't know what, let's say, oh, well, let's take one of the other people. What does it look to like Flask? It looks like something worth X amount of coins, and you can buy this many cigar with it. And that's true too. So the idea is, and this the rich reality thing, I'll tell it to you the way I tell it in the Heidegger course, where Heidegger says that your moods, which are not up to you, that you're thrown into, let reality show up in some way or other, and that's what's going on here. Each person can have a different perspective. And now, what makes it rich reality? Well, I used to think, look at this puzzle. If your mood colors the room, and you're in a grumpy mood and a downer mood, then everything looks gray and annoying and so forth in the room. It isn't as if you have little feelings inside your head of grumpiness and grayness. It's really all over the place. I said this once, it's like the weather. But if you're in a happy, active mood, then everything shows up as opportunities. Did I say this already? It sounds familiar to me. Yeah, I don't know. Why did I already say it? I don't know. But anyway, I'll say it right now again. So now how do you, but these are contradictory. Which mood is the real mood? Will the real mood really answer or be reliable to the person who's grumpy, but illusion to the person who's thinking it's full of good news? No, what happens is that there's enough information in the room that could be annoying, and you could start pointing out things that are annoying, and you're reacting to and your mood is grumpy, and therefore the annoying things are what's attracting you and giving you your perspective. Or you could be in a happy mood, and then the nice things about the room and the people in the room will show up and attract you to seeing things from that perspective. So, okay, just a second. So this rich reality view, like the coin, has so much in it that you can be drawn to have all sorts of different perspectives on it. And there's not a question of which one is right. They're all right. But it's also not a question of if they're all right, why don't they just add up like the perspective on a house? So you see it from behind, and then you see it from the side, and then you see it from the front, and then lo and behold, isn't that wonderful? It all adds up and fits together. It's a house. It isn't like that, because these perspectives all contradict each other. And it's as if somehow you could see, well, never, I wouldn't spell it out, but it's full of, so like the doubloon, reality has a rich amount of details in it that could be a possible source of perspective. And then you get pulled into one. And now somebody had a hand up as if they were unhappy about that. No? Anyway, so that's, so what I think is exciting about the doubloon chapter is that Melville is onto this. He's telling you that of the rich reality of the doubloon and how many weird particular little bits of stuff are all over it. And he's telling you how these 5 different people each see a quite different perspective, and that their perspectives don't add up to a particular object. If you try to add them up, if you could even try to, you would cancel them all out, the front, the back, the side of the house, and floor will be all mixed up and so forth. So you can't add them up into a coherent perspective. What you can do, now having gotten to the perspective story, thanks to Erica, a student came in, I don't know, but anyway, in office hours, and was telling me how to add them up the right way, according to Melville. And I think that's right, though I don't know where in the text to find it. Keep your eyes open. If you add up all these different perspectives in series, so that they don't contradict each other, you can have a richer and richer understanding of of reality. More and more of the perspectives that the doubloon can be seen from. It's easier with the colors, the rainbow. If you put all the colors of the rainbow together as if you could unify them into one, you get whiteness. You don't get a meaningful perspective. But if you put them up in a series, so that you have more and different perspectives, and then you throw yourself into the erotic perspective, and then you throw yourself into the housewife giving a good dinner party perspective, the way Helen does, you could have a whole series in which you got all the colors, and they didn't cancel each other out. And I think that would be the rich kind of life that Ishmael wants, and you can see it in the way he goes around visiting all these different islands and all these different religions and trying to get in sync with all of them, each of them. Yo-Yo, he's going to kiss on the nose, but he's not going to go so far as to fast for a week. And he sees, I can't think of any, what are the other ones? Senses of the sacred that he sees. He sees, of course, the temple made out of the whale skeleton. That's like the doubloon. Well, we should mention that. And when you hear all these voices, but if you add them all up at the same time, then they make a noise and you can't hear anything. That's white noise. Or, but Melville doesn't say that, but he could say this. He says if you go away, you can hear the voices. Let's suppose the voices are sounding one after another, so that they sound like a piece of music. That would be good. It seems the sort of going around and getting in touch with the sacred in a serial sort of way is something that Melville would approve of. And when I say these things, and I don't have any passage to back them up, then you guys should complain, or preferably find a passage to back them up and tell me about it. Tyler.
Seems like.
Oh, I see. Oh, good. Well, yeah, I misspoke. I don't really want to add them up like you add up the sides of the house. That's the wrong way to think about it. Ishmael has a life which is a series of moods, getting in touch with various possible perspectives. And he had a school teacher mood where he was the boss of the students, and he had a married mood. He had a son and so forth, but he also had all these other weird, more stranger moods. But you're right. I meant to say you do them one after another, but you don't try to add them up. That's misleading. But you can get a lot of the sense of the sacred from each of them, and that's it. And that's what it's like to have a series that makes the rainbow. You don't try to add. You're right. As soon as you try to add the colors up, you get whiteness and blankness and so forth. But you have a series of them where you're not trying to add them up. You're just having them one after another. That's what Ishmael seems to do. I mean, I don't know any place where he says he's doing it or recommends it, but it does seem to be his travels around collecting sacred experiences, or experience is a bad thing. It's a sacred perspective on the world. Yeah.
So it seems like most of the other characters in this book, they have a continuous perspective.
They're stuck in one perspective, yeah. That's good, yes.
To kind of put this in comparison, some of always John. It's always described as John.
Right.
Fails constantly describing how life is full of suffering and how suffering outweighs joy and all.
Well, I would like to know. I don't agree with you about Ishmael. Could you leave him out for about a moment? Because he does. Just to remind you, he does talk about suffering, and the man of sorrows is the wisest, and so forth. But he also has what I was going to get to at the end of today: the squeeze of the hand, which is like bliss, like the beatific vision. and so forth. You know, Ishmael's collected them all, it seems, or is in the process of it. But you're right, you just say yes, but there are lots of people stuck in one. Most people are stuck in one. It's their character, and they see everything in terms of it.
My question is, what metric do we have to say that Ishmael is really?
Okay, that's the right kind of question.
Question for Ishmael seems to see a lot of suffering and sadness in the world, and yet we don't see that.
That's right. Their lives are richer for not be. Oh, wonderful. That's the moral. The answer to you is supposedly in the chapter on Boomer and Bunger. Have you got to that yet? I don't remember what it's called. What's it called? You recognize it. One of the stories about there are two jolly guys, the captain and his doctor. Yeah, and they're all absolutely, constantly hilarious and happy, and they obviously in one mood, and they've been in it for ages, and they're going to stay in it. And Ahab just can't stand it, and wants to get out of there, and says, "Get out of here!" And you feel that Ishmael sort of thinks that's wrong too. You shouldn't. You being stuck in a happy mood is missing out on a whole lot of what's important about being a human being. Remember, he says that the one who doesn't understand the role of sorrow is underdeveloped, as if there was more possibilities in him. Good. That's right, but that's the right quote. Good. I was trying to remember that. Yes, and that sort of says both. You've got to fly as high as you can and fly as low as you can, but even when you're flying as low as you can, you're still flying above the people who, now I'm adding something, who are stuck in whatever mood you're developed and they aren't. That's his story.
I guess the way I was reading that is even at the lowest that some people go, they can still experience meaning while still being above.
Yes. That's sort of what? Yeah, they're capable of happiness more than the others who are on the ground. Yes. That, for instance, I hadn't realized how much important the squeeze of the hand is. I could jump to it, but we've already jumped to this from someplace else. If I jump once more, I will lose everybody. When we get to the squeeze of the hand, it's just important to see, and we'll see, that Ishmael is capable of having a very, very positive, blissful experience, even more than we ever see any suffering. The nearest we see, here, contrast this. I am skipping to it, but I can't resist a bit. So the bliss, how many have read the squeeze of the hand part yet? Well, that's something, anyway. But I'm thinking out loud, the bliss that goes with the squeeze of the hand might be about the opposite positive extreme to the, drizzly November mood in his soul, which is what makes him think of suicide and so forth at the very beginning of the book. Yes, it's the dark woods of Dante. That's what just occurs to me. They both begin like in the dark woods, and then it's pretty dark. Okay, so you're raising the right thing, but then the person who's developed as being capable, like the eagle, to be as melancholy as Ishmael is, and as blissed out as Ishmael is, and to do them one after another, to bring in what we were just saying, where they don't contradict each other, they're just more developments and more enriched. Let me stop with that. There's good issues. Okay, I'm going back to where I am. I've just promised, and we're halfway through, that each of these characters, and you added to it, each of these characters is stuck in his one way of what perspective he sees things in. And so we got Starbuck. We were ready for 347. There's nothing very exciting about 347. That's Stubb. He's a believer in the zodiac. And he reads, remember, the zodiac is in the coin too. There's just so much in that coin. The other ones don't even see the zodiac. They're looking at other things of trinities and mountain peaks and so forth. But it's in there too. You can resonate with that too. It can call your attention to it, which is what happens with Stubb. And then Flask. Flask is interesting because it sounds like that he really doesn't see any perspective at all. He just sees objects. I don't know what to make of that exactly. I mean, what we get at the bottom is bottom of 347, I see nothing here but a round thing made of gold, and whoever raises a certain whale, this round thing belongs to him. So what's all the staring been about? It's worth $16, that's true, and at 2 cents the cigar, 960 cigars. Now, what, I mean, does anybody know? I mean, I don't know. It surprises me that he comes in with no perspective. Maybe that's what Melville's saying, that having a materialist perspective is another possibility, and therefore not only you can respond to each of the pictures on the doubloon, you can even respond to the physical doubloon, and that's another way of seeing reality in terms of star. I guess that must be something like that. Yeah, Tyler. Yes, and you can do that, and that's seeing. Therefore, he's not seeing it as possible perspectives. It's not something like a way of life or a mood like the other ones. It's as if he sort of steps back from all the meaning and all the moods and just gives you, like science, an objective, or economics, an objective description. And I guess what I'm adding and you're adding, and you can do that too.
He gives us sort of an objective descriptive method, and this, which might be something like an economic.
Good. I think that's terrific. That's the right thing to do. The Ishmael, that is really Melville, or Ishmael, gives you a description from I don't know, their study or something. It's not something that they're actually involved in, letting it draw them into seeing something. But it looks like, because anyone that looks at the doubloon is drawn into some specific way of seeing it, and a specific experience, and Flask is the materialist, or the economy-minded person who sees the coin just as a chunk of metal. You can do that too. And I keep wanting to put it in this passive form. It can call you to do that too. Remember, I don't want it to look like you choose these perspectives, or these perspectives are choose you. Okay, let me go on and so Flask is done. Queequeg comes up and he sees the unrepresentable understanding of being in his culture written on him on 348. He's in the middle of the page. There comes Queequeg, all tattooing. What says the cannibal? As I live, he's comparing notes, looking at his thigh bone as the old women talk so at the back country and so on and so on. I guess it's Sagittarius. No. He don't know what to make of the doubloon. He takes it for an old button off some king's trousers. That he misunderstands. The Queequeg is looking at something around his thigh, and he thinks it must be this button. But of course, it's really the squiggly thing that the seer carved on his body, which is the whole meaning of being in his culture, which he's taken up, and it's now embodied in him. But he can't read it, so we really don't get an answer, do we, of what Queequeg is revealing or drawn to see what experience. No, I don't think so. Now, why? That should be significant. Why is it that we don't? Because Queequeg has this understanding in his body. So I'm just trying to think out loud. He doesn't pay attention to the doubloon directly. He only is looking for correspondence between what's on the doubloon and what's on his leg, what's written on his leg. And of course, he won't find anything. But because the doubloon is surely a Western understanding of being, and what's carved on his leg is what funny island they're from, the understanding of being. So you could, what's the moral of it? You could be so different in your culture that's built into you from the culture that is built into the part of reality where you happen to be. And that's what the doubloon is doing, that you just don't get any connection at all. I guess that's what happens. Queequeg doesn't tell you any story, like all the rest of them, about what experience or what did I call perspective he's seeing it from. He doesn't, it's as mysterious to him as what's carved on him. I don't know what to do with that. I think that's all right. I mean, that's just another possibility, is to have such incompatible rich realities that there's no comparison between them. That's what best I could do with that. Now, I'm going to think about what I want. Is creek waves like? No, I think it's wrong. I'm not going to say it. I'm misleading. So now we've gone through all these, and I hope we've sort of understood that interpretation, at least this means a lot to my reading of it, is not the way to understand it, because it's not a question of willpower. It's a question of openness and attunement. It's a question of having divine intuitions. At one point, Ishmael says, it's a question of that leads to a kind of polytheistic way of being, and I've said that interpretation is the wrong way to think about that. Another way to think about why it's wrong to call it an interpretation, besides the fact that it's done by willpower and that there's a lot of structure in rich reality. It's not just chaos. But the third thing is, if you try to make a virtue of the fact that it's an interpretation, which is what Nietzsche does, then you're in trouble, because it looks like it ought to have some kind of authority over you in your life, the interpretation you give it. But the interesting thing is that if you think that you are giving things their interpretation, then they don't have this power of calling on you. They don't have any authority over you. You give the rich reality whatever interpretation you please, and you take it back whenever you please. I think that's Melville's sort of objection. So, that comes from thinking too much in terms of interpretation. And what I've just said is interpretations depend on you, and therefore you don't get any sense of some sort of power in the world to which you're grateful and which draws you into things. Okay, now the next thing is, how much evidence is there for what I'm saying? Well, Pip is the evidence for what I'm saying. And on 348, we start hearing about Pip. This is where I said Pip, was important and really near I think he is the central character in the book, as if you're reading the book as you can, to try to find out sort of views of reality. Of course, you don't have to read it like that. You can read it to understand the fishing industry. You can read it to understand the way people thought in the 1850s. It's like the coin. I mean, it's very much like the coin, it occurs to me. It's so rich, with so many possible perspectives in it. But Pip has something very unique, not like any of the other perspectives, even the strange ones that we talked about at the end. So let's write about 20 lines from the bottom. This way, or 348, this way comes Pip, poor boy. Woody had died. It's half horrible to me. He too has been watching all of these interpreters. I said that I had a problem. I wish he hadn't said interpreters. I've been giving a whole lecture on why interpretation is the wrong thing to say. What I like to say is it's a mistranslation. And I would call in Akita to help me out. But unfortunately, I can't say that. I don't know. Either it's Melville is slipping up, which happens even to geniuses, or something's going on there that I don't understand. He says he's been watching all these interpreters, and myself included. And look now, he comes to read it with that unearthly face. Stand and let's hear him. Okay, if anybody tells me why the only time I know where he says interpreters, why he says it there, please let me know. Okay, go both of you. Terrific. That would, B.
It's okay. What interpretations?
Terrific.
Your interpretation's gonna always from your perspective. It's coming out of the orientation that you bring with you, but that you can't yourself choose.
Or see even, because it's pervasive. Aha. So it's if you think of interpretation as the overall interpretation, which colors everything, then you can't see it. Of course, those people think, whoever says that they're giving interpretations. I see what you mean, though. Yeah, there is a way of understanding the notion of interpretation where it doesn't have to mean willful imposition of a meaning.
To what the force structures are in the Heidegger terms, but
Okay.
it's a response to the perspective that you bring with you.
Okay, good. I think that's the right thing to say. I stick to my idea that it'd be better not to use interpretation all of a sudden out of nowhere with nobody reading Heidegger and not make anything of it and let it just sit there. But that's what happens. And if you want to save Melville from even one wobble, you can bring in, I agree with B, a fancy and interesting reading of what interpretation means, which is Heidegger trying to get rid of Nietzsche. Remember, Nietzsche's the willful interpreter, really interpreting, imposing his meaning on sheer chaos. And then there is this other notion, now let's call it interpretation, in Heidegger, where on the basis of the situation, you are drawn into a whole reading of the understanding of being, and it's not willful, and it's an interpretation of a rich reality, not of chaos. Okay, yeah, if you want to save it, send it to Heidegger. Okay, Tyler. Okay.
Maintaining a distinction between interpretation and seeing from perspective. So I think it's right to say that from the inside, what they have is they're seeing from a perspective.
Yes.
The balloon are seeing from a perspective.
Yes.
But if is seeing it from outside.
Oh, yeah. That's right. We haven't got quite to that, but
Inside, it's seeing from a perspective. But when he sees a plurality of people seeing from a perspective, it dawns upon him that actually what all they have are something like projections, interpretations, right? So I think it makes sense for someone above looking down at a plurality of perspectives to think that what it is interpretation.
well, I see that sort of, but not really, because why can't he just see that these are various perspectives? Why does it look like
everyone's looking at the same thing? There has to be something that is the case, right? And if everyone, through the ordinary understanding.
Ordinary understanding, that's right.
So someone like in a tower
Okay.
sees everyone come up with something and tell mutually incompatible stories. What he's going to say is, all they have are interpretations, because these can't all be.
That's good. That's right. That's right. It turns out that rich reality story is that they can all be, quote, right. It's the new meaning of right. And but you're right. If Pip was the sort of naive everyday viewer, then that would make sense. But wait, because we have to read what Pip says now, because Tyler's right. I mean, does he? I mean, some who's looking at him? Nobody interesting, but we better just see who it is. Here comes Queequeg, and so forth. Flask. I don't know who's saying it. Does anybody know? Here comes, and then this person is speaking. Somebody's talking to us. Flask. So here's goes Flask aloft to spy him out. Is it Flask who's saying all this? I mean, that would be an interesting thing. Then we could really think of him as the naive viewer. So what's all this staring at this? I think it might be Flask. So I'll give my interpretation now. I mean, you guys have got your story. My story is this is how it looks to. No, that's too crazy. That would be how Pip, who's very complicated, looks to Flask, who's very simple. It's Dub. He's pretty simple too. Let's go on. I don't know what to make of this yet. Keep in mind, we want to understand. If we understood Pip, we'd understand what's going on. So now focus with all your might, so we'll figure it out before time is up. And so here we go. He says, I look, you look, he looks, we look, ye look, they look. Now, I don't know, does look mean interpret? Does look mean be open to some aspect of a rich reality? We don't know, so let's go on. And I look, you look, so forth again. And then he says, and I, you, he, and we, and ye, and they are all bats. Okay, now that's a tough one. I mean, I've got an interpretation of it, but I don't feel strongly. But we've got to say something. What does it mean to say they're all bats? If you said about a bunch of people, they were all bats, what would that normally mean? I think it would mean that they're all batty, that they're crazy. And that's the only way I can think of that. And how are they all bats? Well, I think it's because each one of them takes their perspective to be the truth. They all walk up and they say, these are the mountains that really are like Ahab, or this is the zodiac. And they mistake an aspect of this rich reality for the whole story about rich reality. Oh, good, 2 people. This is hard work, and we need as much help as we can get. Yeah.
I don't know like how much people do about that aspect thing, but with bats are basically blind, they can echolocation, so they like squeak when they interpret their surroundings, or they have a perspective of their surroundings based on an echo. We don't actually see reality, they just see an echo of reality.
That's interesting. I don't know. I think that's probably wrong, not because they didn't know it yet, but because it somehow doesn't inform our phenomenology. I mean, nobody's experience of the world or of the doubloon is affected in any way by the discovery that the bats do it by echolocation. If all of a sudden one day people would discover a third eye in the middle of the bat's head, which does it by vision, not a hair would be changed in the lives of the people. So, but you might have something to say that is helpful with the fact that Pip himself says that he's a bat. And I don't know what that is. We'll get to that, but that's another level of puzzlement. Mostly, I think it won't help. But where are you? Oh, yeah? Where's this hand next? Oh, yeah. So they're all blind as bats. Yes, that's right. And I think it's important that they don't know that bats can see in the dark. Or maybe they do think bats. Be blind as a bat, interestingly enough, doesn't mean in everyday thinking to be able to see in the dark. I don't know what is to be blind as a bat. It's to be going around in a situation in which one can't see anything, but one is able to avoid bumping into things. It's just plain blind. Okay, to be blind as a bat is to be just plain blind. How do people who say that reconcile it with what bats are doing fine, catching insects and landing in trees?
Well, I think there's a common idea that they're blind because when they fly around, it's very common for them to like bump into you. I think, our feeling that is because they are blind.
So when he says they're all bats, he's saying they are all blind. Now, maybe we'll come together on this. And what are they blind to? Are they just blind in the sense of bumping into things, or is there also, what I'm trying to contribute, something that they don't see right? That they're blind in the... I'm not sure, because I'm making so much out of one little thing. Is it a problem for... I'll get there. Okay, just a second. Is it a problem for Ishmael or Melville or whatever that these people all take their cut on reality, their aspect, their perspective, take their perspective to be the truth about reality? Is he worried about that? Is he thinking about that? I don't know. I mean, I'm reading it in maybe. If so, I'll go back to just saying, but what good would it do to say of them they're all blind? I see, you see, we see, they see, and we're all blind. Then that seems to mean that each of us doesn't see that everybody else is seeing something different than we're seeing. Good. I'm getting encouragement from over here. But maybe over here, okay.
They're not seeing objective reality. They're not seeing the situation with the characters in this book. They're not seeing an objective doubloon. They're all seeing some good idiosyncratic perspective of their own. Not seeing that they're necessarily willing. They're drawn into.
Okay, but I resist this because we wanted to apply to people who aren't bats, like us, when he says we're all bats. And that doesn't mean, well, we're all using echolocation, only we don't know it, or something like that. Yeah.
Badness of the bad. Someone who takes a partial perspective to be the total truth.
Right, that's the battiness, right. Yeah.
Something which is, it's not taking a partial to the whole. It's blind in the sense you think you have a perspective on the world, but what you have is from above, you see it's just a projection on the world, right? So it seems like you can be blind in the sense you think you have a partial truth, but it's really just projection, right? Or you can be mad in the sense of taking a part to be a whole, right? I think the ego notion is this notion of you're just projecting something out onto reality.
Hmm. But of course, you're really paying attention to what bounces back. I mean,
But I mean, they have what's meant. Thinks it's like the part. We might say it's a partial interpretation, partial, but it looks more like just a projection of Ahab's will onto it. It's not even a perspective on.
what do you mean, that's what it looks like to Pip or to Ishmael or to...
Like they're blind. They think they're seeing the world, but what they're doing is projecting themselves on. They don't see it.
They're interpreting, in other words, in the bad sense of did they... Okay, where they're all imposing the interpretation on whatever. That's how it looks from up there. But when you add, and that's what's really going on, who says that's what's really going on? Pip, I guess. Because Ishmael isn't saying that's what's really going on, or Melville, he doesn't think that. That would be, that would be old-fashioned philosophy. Okay, that he sees that. Let me go on, but before I do, did I see a hand up over here? Yeah. Okay.
So maybe Melville's been making a distinction between whether seeing the puzzling truth or living in a comforting ignorance. So because it seems to be that if you can choose one perspective and somehow choose one perspective and conform to it, even knowing that it's not the complete reality. But
of course, there is no complete reality. We Melville people know. Yeah.
happier than just not choosing one perspective and attempting to do the impossible task of seeing it all at once.
Yeah, you can't see it all at once because there's no all, and it would cancel out anyway. We're agreeing about that. Is that right?
So I think what my point now is that the major distinction is whether to choose to live a life in ignorant happiness or in knowledgeable.
Maybe. Let's look for more. I mean, until we find more passages, we don't know whether to follow that line or not. Yeah.
To the time that stuff and Starbucks say that they are the evidence for all of them, because it's as if they're given the book read and not activate the they're forced into a particular reading.
They're all each are forced into each is forced by his way of life, so to speak, and way of what's carved on his body into a particular way of seeing, which could be a series of ways of seeing. It help the balloon to which they're receptive stands for reality. We all have to agree to that, I presume. And then comes things that I'm pointing out, and it's a very rich reality, and each of them resonates to, is attuned to some particular perspective in that rich reality. That so far everything seems right. I mean, it fits the text, it fits the phenomenon. Then I don't know what else. You understand what else?
Somebody says that they're reading with the balloon, and this is a kind of analogy to reading a text.
I see. Well, maybe. Yeah, I see what you're saying then. Thanks, Jim. Yeah. Okay. And who says they're reading the balloon, and where? I don't want to make an effort to understand that until I. Where? What? Where do they say that?
346.
Okay, 346. Ahab's talking. Now Starbuck is talking. Well, I don't want to. Until I see it, I don't know what to do with it. So, but I have to go on because I've got to cover a little bit more for sure. The rest of Pip's talking because we just got to the point where he's saying all these important things. So let's go to the bottom of 348, and now we're at the top of 349. He says they're all bats, and I'm a crow, especially when I stand on top of the pine tree here. So when he's on top of the mast, he sees it all not from any perspectives, but he sees the whole activity from a different angle. I'm a crow, so forth and so forth, and that I don't think we get any further with that. 349. We're just going to stop trying for the time being. Everybody keep their eyes open. We want to understand what it is to say that he's a bat too. That's hard because it looks like it being bats is to take your perspective for reality. And my desperate thought was that Pip can see in the dark, but I think that's just out of nowhere. I don't think. So why is he a bat? I don't know. And if anybody does, please come to office hours and tell me or write a paper on it. And that's all I can say. He does see that it's all a question of their various perspectives. And he's not having, it's important that he doesn't have a perspective. Let me read what I wrote here. He sees all the perspectives and he sees it as perspectives, and he has no interpretation or perspective of his own. And however you want to talk about that issue about interpretation and perspective, he doesn't have any of it. He just has a story that everybody else has an interpretation or is open to a perspective, whichever you want to make it. But it's really, I think, not in question. Well, no, I want to go. I scratch that. We got to skip something. So he's open to the indefiniteness of the situation. Well, what's driven him mad? Something drove him mad. I guess when he says they're all bats, maybe not. I'm just catching up. Are they crazy, so forth? No. No. He has his own way of relating to the doubloon. He sees it and gives all these ways of I look, he look, and so forth. And he's a crow. When he's in the crow's nest up the top, up there. Yeah, that's as far as that gets. Now I wanted to get, but I don't see, I have it with me, which is sort of funny. Oh no, it's what I skipped. Oh, it's very important. Now, where is it? I want to know what Pip sees when he sinks to the bottom of the ocean. The lonely castaway. Well, yeah, okay. What exactly did Pip see? I skipped that to go follow the whole issue about interpretation, but now I want to go back to that. And we're on very complicated stuff coming up here. At the top of 334, that last paragraph. But it so happened that they found Pip and they picked him up, but by the merest chance, the ship itself rescued him and so forth. But from then on, the little Negro went about the deck, and idiots such, at least they said he was. The sea had jeeringly kept up his finite body, but drowned the infinite of his soul. Now, I don't know what that's all about, and I don't think that's important. But what's important is what's coming up next. It's what did Pip see? What did he experience when he sank to the bottom of the ocean? That's probably the nearest thing to a statement about God and what God is and what God does that's in the book. So not drowned entirely, though. He was carried down alive to wondrous depths where strange shapes of the unwarped primal world glided to and fro before his passive eyes. And this is just amazing prose. And the miser merman wisdom revealed his hoarded heaps, and among the joys, heartless, ever juvenile eternity, now comes the crucial punch business. Pitt saw the multitudinous, God omnipresent coral insects that out of the firmament of waters heaved the colossal orbs. Well, that is all pretty amazing. That's if the colossal orbs is the Earth, presumably, and the coral insects make it. They weave it, but they don't know what they're doing. They don't know they're weaving a world. And they sort of remind you of the rainbow, though I don't know what to do about that. The coral seems like another rainbow story. They're setting up this rich rainbow world, but they're doing it with no goal, with no plan, with no intelligence. That's how coral insects do it. So he's seeing a universe that has got no sort of Aristotelian, Dante-ish structure. There is no in it hierarchies or anything like that. Everything is just accidental. That's what he saw. And this unwarped primal world, that is so weird. I thought it must be a mistranslation. I don't even know what the word means. And maybe somebody who does know, I'm going to mention it. All I can make out of it is when you have a carpet and you weave a carpet, there's a warp and a woof. The vertical lines and the horizontal threads, and the vertical threads. I don't know which is warp and which is woof, and it doesn't matter. But the interesting, funny thing is, if this isn't some kind of typo, he's pointing out that the carpet that's being woven by not the coral insects now, but God as the weaver, is equally meaningless, accidental, and chaotic. What would it be to weave a carpet in which you had no warp or woof? It would be sort of falling apart as you were weaving it. It wouldn't be coming together. I don't know whether that's what it means. You have an idea, a better idea?
I want to say it's chaotic. We want to say it's order because it's contingent variable.
Oh, that's what I want to say. Not chaotic. We don't want to go to Nietzsche where it's just what's the Henry James, the William James Britton, something buzzing confusion. What is it? Blinding, buzzing confusion, William James calls it. No, it's not that. It's not that. And that's the important thing, that it's got enough being ordered. If it was a carpet with no warp and no woof and just a heap of yarn, that would be chaos. But yeah, that's right. It's ordered. It's precarious order. It's accidental order. It isn't an order that you can appeal to understand anything. And that's what he sees. Okay, it's 5, but I'm going to read the last sentence. He saw God's foot upon the treadle of the loom. That's where this woof stuff comes in, and spoke it, and therefore his shipmates call him mad. And then I'm going to finally wandering, all mortal reason. Man comes at last to the celestial thought, which to reason is absorbed and frantic, and weal and woe feels to him uncompromised, indifferent as his God. All that adds up to something. He's seen at the bottom of the ocean that the way the world is organized, it has a sort of structure, but the structure is completely meaningless, accidental, contingent, and so forth. And that's what drove him mad. And that's why and finally, I better just say this, and what's his reaction? He attaches himself to Ahab and goes around with Ahab, because Ahab is strong in the midst of all this, insisting on an answer, and Pip is totally open, has no ego, no identity, no strength to insist on an answer. And there's as the Manxman says at the end of some chapter, I don't want to keep you, so I can't get to it. But Manxman says, there goes two daft ones, one daft with strength and one daft with weakness. You know which is which, of course. Ahab is trying to impose this order and meaning on everything. Pip is just open to the total emptiness, or emptiness is wrong, total non-order. And think always of Dante when you think of order. This is exactly the opposite of that. Coral insects did not build the Inferno and the Paradiso and the spheres and all that stuff, because they just put beautiful stuff together. The coral, the orbs and stuff. It's not that it's chaotic. It's not that it's ugly. It just doesn't give you any direction, any meaning in any direction to how to live. Is that thing right? Okay, we'll stop with that.